Welcome back to Hannity, and here is more of my interview with the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. This is from earlier today at the Blair House. You agree with me, radical Islam is the evil in our time.
Yes,
and Iran represents the biggest threat.
Because it would couple a radical Islamic regime with nuclear weapons.
That can't happen.
There could be evil that is not threatening because it doesn't have the powers of mass murder. But when you couple a radical Islamic regime that says death to America with the weapons of mass death, then you have a much, much bigger problem.
A squared, B squared, C squared. Radical Islamic terrorists, weapons of mass destruction equals a modern-day Holocaust?
It's up to us to prevent it.
That's the important issue. It's the one thing the President said yesterday is that will not happen. And I'm just assuming with a new coalition that it would be very possible. I don't think a lot of people fully understand. I watched all these years since the Iranian Revolution in '79, death to America, death to America, death to Israel, burning the American flag, burning the Israeli flag. I think now, after all of the incidents of terror, but we have this whole immigration problem where so many refugees have gone to Europe, and parts of Europe have culturally shifted dramatically. And if you look at countries under Sharia that oppress women and they kill gays and lesbians, and there are 16 countries that don't accept Jewish passports. 16. And America is supposed to take in the world's refugee population. Explain, how does America and Europe, based on your experience in the region, how do they ascertain if they're taking in immigrants, if they're taking in refugees, whether or not ISIS will infiltrate the refugee population? How can you possibly vet what's in somebody's heart?
It's very hard to vet, but every country tries to, in one degree or another, tries to do that. And every country has to have the freedom to do so. And I won't get into your considerations of doing so, but I will say that, I'll say this, I'm a great believer in, in human exchanges and markets and so on, but I think it's very important to be able to prevent the infiltration of terrorists. That is, because terrorism is so disruptive, It doesn't necessarily kill that many people, although you suffered a terror attack that killed thousands of people.
I interviewed you, and you were one of our strongest allies at the time.
I remember that very, very well. That was a moment of great tragedy. So as the weapons become more sophisticated and more deadly, then the threat of terrorism becomes more deadly. And therefore, the need to prevent terrorist infiltration becomes greater. And this is something that I think applies to all countries today.
The 1,000-pound bomb on a missile that Iran currently has can reach your country in less than 7 minutes.
Right.
It's pretty scary.
Yeah.
And I went to Israel.
But when they'll have ICBMs, it could reach your country, and that's what they're working on right now.
That's what they're working on.
Remember, you're the great Satan. We're just the small Satan, they say, and we're just on their way. On their way to what? Henry Kissinger said, and I think very intelligently, he said, Iran is not merely a country. It's much more of a cause. It's a cause more than a country. What is that cause? It's global domination by their brand of radical Islam.
A caliphate.
It's more than that. They believe that they're destined to govern the world. Anybody who doesn't agree with them, they'll be able to subjugate or kill. And they're working on the means to achieve that. Their greatest enemy, they think, is the United States. They think everyone else is a derivative. And they're developing the capacity to deliver on their slogans, death to America and death to Americans in between. So we have a grand mission, and it's not a mission that we invent. We didn't invent these ICBMs. We didn't invent their nuclear program in which they seek to create nuclear weapons. We don't invent the terrorists that they send throughout the Middle East and the world. Iran has a terror network of dozens and dozens of countries that they operate with their own operatives and their henchmen.
Well, they've been fighting proxy wars for decades.
But I'm talking about terrorist cells that they are building, planning them, preparing them throughout the world, in Asia, in Africa, in Europe, and in this
United
hemisphere.
States.
In this hemisphere as well.
Yeah. It's a pretty scary thought. You know, let me go to the Palestinian issue on this one point. You said, the president said one state, two state, maybe a whole new paradigm, and then talked about settlements briefly. It might be helpful not to for now. I don't want to harp on that point so much as I want to ask this. If this coalition can be built, does that solve that problem too?
Could help. Could help. Maybe it'll help.
Maybe absorb a population?
Begin to affect this persistent refusal to recognize Israel in any boundary, which is what is the source of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The reason it goes on is because the Palestinians continue to agitate for Israel's destruction. They don't care about this territory or that boundary or that settlement. They say everything is a settlement. Tel Aviv is a settlement. Jerusalem is a settlement. Haifa is a settlement. We have to get rid of everything. And I think that some normalization in the Arab world could help us begin to change attitudes there. But even if we did, and I think they have to come and recognize the Jewish state. I've said always, you know, you want peace? The first thing is you got to get rid of the thing that prevents peace. The thing that prevents peace is the persistent refusal to recognize the right of the Jewish people for a state of their own. That's what the Palestinians have to get rid of.
It's a simple precondition.
It's a simple.
They don't recognize your.
I don't say it's a precondition for talks, but if you want to end the conflict, that is a prerequisite for peace.